It was supposed to be the happiest day of their lives. Music in the air, laughter under the summer sun. But joy turned to panic when flashing blue lights cut through the celebration. A neighbor had called the cops, claiming something didn't look right about the wedding next door. Guests froze, hearts pounding, as officers approached the groom in his tuxedo. No one knew what would happen next, until he calmly reached into his jacket and revealed something that left everyone, including the caller, speechless. What could turn a moment of hate into utter shock? Before the sirens, before the stairs, Marcus Johnson was just a man in love. A dedicated police officer and a proud son of the community, he spent years serving the same neighborhood where he grew up, a place that had taught him both pride and pain. Today, though, wasn't about duty or uniform. It was about family, love, and a promise kept. The small backyard of his mother's home had been transformed into a dreamlike setting. White chairs, gentle music, and laughter that carried through the warm afternoon air. His bride, Tasha, glowed as she walked down the aisle, her smile bright enough to outshine the summer sun. Friends and family swayed to the rhythm of joy, the kind that's earned after long battles and shared struggles. For Marcus, this moment symbolized more than marriage. It was a statement of hope. Two black professionals, standing tall, surrounded by love and success. A living image of everything they'd worked for despite a world that hadn't always been kind. But across the picket fence, someone watched. A white neighbor, arms folded, lips tight, eyes darting between the celebration and her phone. She didn't see love. She didn't see community. She saw something she couldn't explain and chose to fear it. Inside that quiet decision, a storm was forming. One that would turn a wedding into a spectacle and a moment of joy into a test of dignity. The laughter faded the moment the first police car rolled up. Its siren wailed briefly before cutting out, leaving only the hum of engines and the whispers of confusion. Marcus turned toward the street, a knot forming in his stomach. He didn't need to see the badge to know what was coming. He'd seen this scene before, too many times, from the other side of the uniform. Two officers stepped out, scanning the yard as if stepping into enemy territory. Their hands hovered near their belts, eyes sharp, movement slow. "We got a report of suspicious activity," one muttered. Suspicious. Marcus had heard that word weaponized 1,000 ways, but never against his own family. Guests looked at each other, unsure whether to move or speak. The music had stopped. Even the children sensed something was wrong. Marcus's mother, standing by the buffet table, clutched her chest, whispering a prayer. The bride's smile faltered. "This is our wedding," she said softly, her voice trembling between disbelief and fear. Who would call the police on a wedding? Across the fence, the neighbor watched from her porch, phone still in hand. Her face was pale, but her eyes carried a twisted satisfaction, as if her concern had been justified. Marcus felt heat rise in his chest. He wanted to shout, to tell them this was his home, his family, his life. But years of training told him to stay calm, to de-escalate. He stepped forward, raising his hand slightly, every muscle tight with restraint. "Sir, I'm asking you to stay where you are," one officer barked, hand inching toward his holster. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Cameras came out, phones raised in shaky hands. The atmosphere turned electric, charged with the unspoken fear that something irreversible was about to happen. Marcus froze, his heart pounding in his ears. He knew one wrong move could turn a misunderstanding into a tragedy. But he also knew he couldn't stand there as a suspect on his own wedding day. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into his jacket. "Don't," the officer snapped. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Time seemed to stop. His bride screamed his name. His mother sobbed. The children huddled together, wide-eyed. Marcus didn't flinch. He pulled out a black leather wallet and flipped it open. Inside, his badge. The gold glint caught the sunlight, a silent declaration of truth. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The officers stared, processing what they saw. The same authority they carried, reflected back at them from the man they were ready to handcuff. "Officer Marcus Johnson," he said, voice steady but cold. "I work with the department downtown. Now, would you like to tell me what's so suspicious about a wedding?" The words hung heavy in the air. One officer looked down, the other muttered something under his breath, but neither answered. Behind them, the neighbor shifted uncomfortably, her confidence draining as quickly as the color in her face. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the quiet sobs and the sound of someone's phone still recording. The truth was out, but the damage had already been done. The joy was gone, replaced by a wound invisible but deep. A reminder that no title, no badge, no achievement could fully shield them from prejudice. Still, Marcus stood tall, and across the fence, the neighbor who had dialed those 3 numbers felt the weight of her decision settle like a shadow. But the story wasn't over yet, because what Marcus did next, no one saw coming. The air was thick with tension, the kind that feels alive, pulsing through every heartbeat. Cameras were still rolling, capturing every second of disbelief. Marcus stood in the center of it all, tuxedo rumpled, badge glinting in the sunlight, the embodiment of dignity under fire. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. One finally muttered, "We didn't know," but the damage wasn't something they could apologize away. Every guest knew what that pause meant. They hadn't seen a groom. They hadn't seen a man in love. They'd seen a threat. Marcus's voice trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of everything he'd carried for years. "You didn't know," he repeated softly. "You didn't ask. You just assumed." He turned slowly, his eyes sweeping across the crowd. Family, friends, and neighbors who had witnessed a day meant for love turn into a scene of humiliation. His gaze finally met the woman beyond the fence. Her phone was still in her hand, but her expression had changed. Gone was the smug certainty. Now, only guilt and the slow, dawning realization of what she had done. Marcus stepped closer to the officers, voice steady but fierce. "This is what we live with. Even when we serve, protect, and uphold the law, we're still questioned, still doubted, still seen as less." The crowd was silent. No one moved. Every word landed like a strike. Raw, unfiltered truth echoing louder than any siren. Then, in one deliberate motion, Marcus unclipped his badge and placed it in the officer's hand. "You can have it," he said quietly. "Because today, it doesn't mean a thing." The officer froze, unsure what to do. The neighbor's eyes filled with tears. And for the first time that day, no one looked at Marcus as a suspect or even as an officer, just as a man, stripped bare by the world's cruel double standard. The crowd erupted in applause, not out of joy, but solidarity. A broken wedding had become a moment of truth. But as Marcus walked away from the flashing lights, one thought lingered in everyone's mind. If this could happen to him, what hope was left for anyone else? The next morning, the backyard was quiet. The music had stopped, the guests had gone, and only the wilted petals and toppled chairs remained. What should have been remembered as the happiest day of Marcus and Tasha's lives now carried the heavy silence of something stolen, not their love, but their peace. The neighbor never came to apologize. Maybe she didn't know how. Maybe she didn't think she needed to. But her single phone call had exposed something deeper than bias. It revealed a truth that too many live with every day. That black joy is often seen as a disturbance, and black success as a threat. Marcus returned to work weeks later. His badge was back on his chest, but it felt different now. Heavier, almost hollow. Every time he responded to a call, he wondered if someone would look at him the way those officers had looked at his family, with suspicion first, humanity second. Yet, something inside him had changed too. That day had stripped away the illusion of safety, but it also strengthened his resolve. He began mentoring young officers, speaking at schools, and telling his story, not out of anger, but out of hope that one day, understanding could replace fear. The wedding photos never made it to the album, but one image went viral. Marcus standing tall, holding his badge in the sunlight, surrounded by witnesses to both love and injustice. It became a symbol, a reminder that dignity can stand even where respect is denied. As the video ends, one truth echoes beyond the screen. Racism doesn't always wear a uniform or carry a weapon. Sometimes it hides behind a window, a phone, or a silent assumption. So ask yourself, if you had been that neighbor, that officer, that witness, what would you have done differently? And more importantly, what will you do the next time silence feels easier than speaking up?